start a series on stewardship. Okay, my husband's like, oh, you just did that. I said, no, I've done a lesson or so, but I haven't done the series as it's laid out. So Striving Together Publications put together a book, and I have it. So I've made it out of that, and then I kind of make it my own, you know, add in scriptures, that kind of thing to go with it, because I always want our class to be heavy on scripture. And then you're going to see on the back, because their lessons, they're really 2 to 3 lessons. And I'm not going to take that long to do this series. And I'm not even saying I'll finish the whole book. But I feel like this is a very important topic. It's something that I struggle with. And I know a lot of ladies, Christian ladies, struggle with managing the resources that God has given us, like time. You know, that is such a big one. And our responsibility in managing these resources. So that's what this hits over. And so we're going to go over that. On the back, that is what you can work on this week. Now, obviously, if you don't, that's up to you. But this is the second piece. And I believe somebody can come into our class over this series of lessons and just get the lesson that I give and still be good and still walk away with a lot. But for those who choose to do the other side of the page each time, you're going to get extra. You're going to get more out of these lessons and out of this series just because it expounds. But there's no way I could do both, especially once I add scriptures and all that.
So you're just saying, like, basically when you get done with the first one, you go back, if you choose to, go back and read the verses. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying we'll do the front pages in Sunday school. During the week, I encourage everybody to do the second page.
Oh, okay.
Okay? And I'll try to make it in such a way that those who choose not to do the second page, or those who are not here to, you know, get the second page, where each week you can still, like, I still want our online friends to be able to, you know, get a good lesson. So that's what we'll do. But that second page is just digging deeper, laying more foundation. It's just good stuff. But here we go. So the lesson 1A, and I call this other side B, but we'll always do the A together, is stewarding life. And the definition given for stewarding life was, and sorry for it's a little fuzzy, the managing and balancing of God's gifts to enable us to invest our lives in that which has lasting significance. Okay? So it's the gifts that God has given us, and we're going to go over this and expound a little bit more, you know, learning how to use these resources and stewarding, and we'll go over this definition down here too as well. So the world encourages us, the world's philosophy, you know, growing up, I heard a lot about this, and even when I'm amongst ladies, you know, or I'll see something that will say, follow your dreams. That's the big thing. Follow your dreams. Make your dreams come true. You know, make sure you dream big. And, you know, so the world tries to teach us to dream big, first of all, to dream big, and then to be successful in living out those dreams. That's why there's so many self-help books. Have you ever gone to like Barnes and Nobles and seen the amount of self-help books? Or just, you know, go to Amazon.com and put in self-help, and you're going to get a lot of things. Because the world's philosophy, they don't know Jesus. They don't know Jesus, so all they have is their own philosophy. And their philosophy is deep, dig way down deep inside you and pull out that person that can do this, because that person is down there. You know, but this is very opposite to what stewarding life actually is. So they're, you know, and they teach you to dream big. The world says dream big. The world says be successful in making your dreams come true and leave a legacy. This is very important to the world. Leave a legacy. Leave your footprint. Leave your mark on this world so that when you die, they know your name. Okay? Very, very different than what we as Christian ladies have for a philosophy. So that's the worldly philosophy, and God's philosophy of stewarding life is opposite. What stewarding life is that we need to understand stewarding life means that we must understand the following things. First, we must understand that life, for however long, is a gift from God. Okay, life for however long is a gift from God. And the other side of your page talks about life. Okay, it's when we lose sight that our life is a precious gift from God, we do not have the correct, we're not viewing things through the correct lens. Everything gets really blurry and out of focus. And we always have to keep in our mind that life is a gift. You know when we tend to remember that life is such a gift? When we've lost somebody or when our life is on the line. That's when all of a sudden, it comes into focus real clear. And I've heard people say, as they've lost a loved one, a spouse, or some, it really shows you what's important. Well, that's because your lens view is different now, and all of a sudden everything is really focused. Life, for however long, is a gift from God. Let's all go to James chapter 4, verse 14. James chapter 4, verse 14. James chapter 4, 14 says, "Whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time, and then vanisheth away." Life for however long. Everyone's life, we all do not live and then die the same amount of time.
No.
Okay? And so this is just saying that life is a vapor. Life just comes and it goes really quickly. And it's amazing because I'm sure you'll agree with me, the older we get, the more that this is, like my parents are just like, we just can't believe where has life gone? Like, and I'm even feeling that, especially as I watch our parents aging. This verse is like, yes, it is but a vapor, and so it'll change our life. It truly will if we learn to view life as a gift from God, which it is.
I was looking at your family pictures yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, I almost started crying because it is just so sweet to see from your dad down to your little Weston or your little Donovan, how God has used you guys and how he continues to use. Pastor mentioned that the other night. He said, I hope Donovan and Weston pick up the torch where Mom and Grandpa.
Yeah, when he said that, that was very impacting to me, but we have to be carrying the torch to hand off to them, and that's the thing, so in order to understand what stewarding life means, we must understand that life for however long, that vapor, is a gift from God. And then 2, we have to understand that God has entrusted us to steward our life for him. Okay? This is where it's so different from the world. The world knows nothing more than to live for themselves. And there are people that really are very giving of their lives and their resources to other people. But for the Christian, we have to understand it's always about him. And he's given us this gift of life, and it's up to us. He's entrusted us to steward our life for him. Just like if my husband gives Devin an heirloom item that he got from his dad. He's entrusted him to care for that. Okay? On a much larger scale, that's what God's given each of us Christian ladies the gift of life, and he's like, I'm trusting you with this. And our job is to steward that life for him and bring him honor and glory. So, understand life for however long is a gift from God. 2, understand he's entrusted us to steward that life for him. Colossians 3:23. Let's turn there.
I've got it.
Okay, you want to read that? Great.
And whatsoever ye do, do it heartily, as to the Lord, and not unto men.
Okay, it's, the way we steward our life, is not meant to be for men. It is supposed to be for God. Whatsoever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord. It's all about the Lord. And this gift that he's given us of life is all about stewarding it. Live my life heartily for the Lord and not men. Okay? Then number 3, understanding that stewarding means every resource that we have, every single one comes from God. And this includes our time, our finances, our health, our relationships, the influence that we have. In all these resources, God has given us the tools that we need in order to accomplish his plan for our lives. He's given us the tools by giving us all these resources. But we have to understand that that every resource comes from God. It's when we lose sight of that we think that we can do things on our own. Well, I'll make the money and I'll take care of things. It does not work that way. And in order to steward our life the way it's meant to be stewarded, we have to understand that every resource comes from God. John chapter 1:3. Who has that one?
I have that one.
Jen?
All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made.
All
Kinda like a
things
tongue
were
twister
made
there.
by God. He has given it all, every single resource. There's nothing that somebody could say, well, actually, no, it's not true, because it all ends up, when we breathe, that is from God. You can't work without oxygen.
Can't do
You
anything.
can't work without, so it all stems back to God. And again, the world's not going to see it that way. There's a lot of I'm a self-made man or anything. But, it's because they do not understand that all resources come from God. But as Christian ladies, we need to understand that every resource comes from God, and it's our job to steward them in a way that pleases God. So, and just remember, it's helpful to always remember in our life that, and we'll go over this, that God has a plan for us, and that he's given us everything we need to fulfill that plan. Okay? So he's never giving us things that, saying, I want you to do this, and then there's no possible way for us to do that. Well, yes, there is, because that's God's plan, and he gives us the tools that we need. Our approach to the resources he's given us, okay, remember, we're talking resources, time, finances, health, relationships, influence, all those kind of things. How we view those, our approach to them, that will determine our success in living out God's will for our lives. How we view the resources he's given us, that is going to be how we live out our lives. If we view all the resources, all the blessings, everything in our life as coming from God, then if we really view it that way, then our life will be lived for God. Okay? But if we lose focus and forget and do not remind our forgetful little selves, we're human, we're made of flesh, and we do not keep this in our mind, hey, every single thing I have comes from God, then it's so easy, and it's a ploy of Satan. Lose focus of that, then they don't live for God. They live for them. He's so subtle. Satan is so subtle with what he uses. That's why it's important for us to bring up these kind of things and to have these kind of lessons, and for preacher to bring up these things in preaching, and for us to read good books by good authors that are using the right Bible. And so it helps us to constantly keep focus, because we lose focus. I do. I lose focus all the time. It's like, attention deficit disorder, like start one thing here and then, I can't remember what I was doing the other day, but I found the peanut butter in the fridge kind of thing, and I'm just like, and that's just the way I go, it's like, Chicken Little. So I have to constantly be reminded to focus back in. And, we can say, yeah, I understand life is a gift from God, but I don't keep focus of that. Okay, you know what? Sticky notes are great, and I need to start doing this, because I did it at one time where I had verses and stuff all around. What a helpful reminder it is. And that's why if you come to my house, you'll see things that 31 was very helpful to me. We spent a lot of money, And I used my resources at that time in selling 31 because the things I got that I had made, I put things about the Lord on it. So like my blanket bin says God is good. You know, and I have a couple of canvas that one says pray without ceasing. Why? Because I need these, and they look better than sticky notes. But I need these reminders, and so do you. I need it to help me keep focus because it's so easy to lose focus.
I'd say something really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Your idea is, I have it out on by my couch.
Mm-hmm. I
have all these verses that have really stuck out with me. And then I also did like cards people gave me. But anyways, the verses were there. And the other day I was having a day with somebody, and I saw that and I thought, oh, thank you, Lord.
Yep.
So I just think that's great.
And you don't know how much that'll mean to you until you're sitting there looking at it going, wow, I really needed that.
Well, yeah.
You know, so just do it. Start finding ways to help bring the focus back in. Now, there are basically 3 ways that people handle the resources that God has given them. You know, because everybody is given resources, okay? And by the way, I was going to ask, does anyone have any other resource you want to add? We said time, finances, health, relationships, influence. Is there anything else you can think of that would be considered a resource?
Communication,
Mm-hmm.
like through cell phone
Mhm.
or writing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one that
Every
people-
resource we have comes from God. What about if someone has like a knack for doing finances? You know, like Donna does.
A
I
gift.
won't say, it is truly a gift because this girl doesn't have that gift.
Amen.
So when you do have those kind of gifts, you know, but we all have different gifts, but it's a matter of using that resource for God. You know, Miss Donna could be working for a big company still, and not that that would be wrong, but she has chosen to use her gift that God's given her here at the church. You know, and stewarding our resources
I
for
think
God.
Miss Pop's just generosity.
Yeah, what about her vehicles?
Oh yes, she
Yep.
has many vehicles.
Okay, and we can see
Couple, I think.
Yep.
Couple.
and
That's
using
not
our resources for God.
We're using them.
I think he gives everybody, like you said,
Hmm.
the main ones, like the eyes, the ears, the mouth, the touch. Those are general for practically everyone, but then there are specific gifts that he gives. But we need to work on the general ones as bad as we do the
It's so true.
main ones.
Yep. And you know, he's given us these tools. So let's take a look at the 3 ways that people handle the resources. The first one is squandering. This can be very convicting. Am I squandering the resources that God has given me? And it's easy to say, no, I give and all that. But this lesson is about going deeper than that. And for me not to always say, oh no, I'm good. But actually looking in that, you know, in the water or in the mirror and seeing the true reflection thereof through God's word. You know, that's asking God to, okay, help me to really see what I need to work on, what category I'm in, how I'm doing this, how I'm spending the resources. You know, we need to be honest with ourselves. I guess that's what I'm saying is, you know, I've called myself the pile lady for a reason. I struggle in that area, but it's no good for me to pretend that I'm some organized neat freak with it, you know, because then I can't address the issue. Then it just makes it easy for me to ignore. It's the same way with this stuff, is let's really stop and evaluate. You know, search my heart, oh God, and show me if there be any wicked way in me. So the first one, squandering. This is when we indiscriminately, not even realizing it, waste the resources in purposeless living, okay? The first bullet on that one is, this is how the majority of people handle the resources that are given them. Purposeless living. That is what the world does. That is not what the Christian is supposed to do. We are not supposed to squander our resources in purposeless living. The next bullet under that one is this group's motto, the squandering group, whether that is us in there or not, but this group's motto could be live and let live, okay? And that's not a biblical philosophy. The world tries to tell us that that's the way we're supposed to view things because that's being kind, and doesn't God want us to be kind? No, this is not a biblical philosophy of live and let live. But if you listen to the world, they'll try to tell us this is the way we should be.
Actually, live and let live is putting them first.
Yeah.
Do
And
whatever I want to do.
exactly
Yeah,
it.
it's all me.
So
Me, me, me.
it's as opposite to biblical living and stewardship as you can get. So don't but that's what their thing is those that squander the resources. They're like, I don't care what they do, and you shouldn't care about what I do. That's what that philosophy is. So you squander your resources if you want. I'll squander mine or not. And you don't care about me, and I won't care about you and what you're doing. That's their way of thinking. So, indiscriminately wasting resources on purposeless living. And then the third bullet under the squandering group is no acknowledgement that there is a divine. It says diving.
Perfect.
There is no acknowledgement that there is a divine purpose for living. They just coast through. The squandering group just lives day to day. And you know what? I really do see a lot of these as we go door to door and as we pick up the kids on the bus, that kind of thing is existing. That's what this kind of reminds me of. People just existing, live paycheck to paycheck, using up their resources, no thought for, they're just
miserable.
like, this is what I have now, I'm going to enjoy it while I have it, and never thinking about the future or what's down the road or eternity or anything. Just everything they have, just squander, just purposeless living. So that's that first group, squandering. That's very convicting. I don't want to be near that group. So we have to stop and ask ourselves, is that the group? Is that how we're handling the resources God has given us, is squandering? Okay, the next way that people handle the resources that God has given them is spending. Okay, so this is when we spend God's resources without allowing them to be replenished. Squandering and spending are different. Squandering is purposeless living, just, what's that saying? What will be. I can't remember. It's in a different language. But, oh, yeah, whatever. You spend yours, I'll spend mine. That's the first group, squandering, just going through it, no purpose, just coasting through life. The second is spending God's resources without allowing them to be replenished. The first bullet under that is God's design in our life is cycles of rest and renewal. Okay? We're designed this way. Rest is a must. Rest is a must. So a person can be spending their resources for God, and that's wonderful. That's what we want. But the thing is that we need to allow God to replenish it. And this is, and I'll talk to you in just a minute about this. Let's look at the second bullet. The motive of wanting to spend our resources up for God may be right, but we can only run on adrenaline so long before we become empty. Okay? This reminds me of sometimes how, and we've seen it since we've started the church, other people, other families that started their churches at the same time, and they never replenished. They used up their resources, they used up themselves for God and didn't allow Him to replenish, and now they're under the ministry. Does that make sense?
I'm kind of confused, but that's okay.
It's just like training the young people to take your place.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do that, then it'll die.
And if pastor never if pastor tries to do, run for God and never gets apart. I don't know if you remember that we took a 3-week sabbatical type thing, you call it vacation, but we didn't go around family, we didn't go anywhere, we just went by ourselves in the camper, and we had to come apart for a little bit. That's a time of rest and renewal. And this is a biblical principle because God tells us to, that we're supposed to rest.
Okay, now I understand.
On the seventh day of creation, he rested. We need that too. Our bodies are actually designed that way, and our minds. And so for the Christian who, with good intentions, because they love the Lord, they spend up all their resources, money, everything. And this is why, so a person would be like, spend all their money, and there's no additional money coming in. Okay? And while you may give it to somebody, say, oh, I see that person's in need, and give them all your money, and because you have a good heart and you saw another fellow Christian in need, first of all, you really have to make sure that's what God would have you do. Second of all, we have to understand that God has a system of replenishing things. And so we've just got to be walking close to the Lord when we do that stuff, so that we're not using up all of our resources. Again, it's time, it's finances, it's health. The pastor, and we can just even say Christian, but I often think of the pastor because we've seen so many examples of this. The pastor who runs himself ragged in the ministry to the point where he doesn't take care of his health, physical health, and his spiritual well-being, and he ends up getting used up and broken down and never let God replenish it. And then there's a point where he steps out of the ministry because he can't go on. Physically and spiritually, he can't go on. But that's because God has set up a system of rest and renewal. And so he wants us, so spending, the person that takes all the resources God has given them and just uses it all and doesn't allow God to replenish. And it particularly does apply to health and stuff and mental well-being and stuff. Yes, the intentions are good, but we're not applying a biblical principle of rest and renewal here. And that's important to keep that in focus. And I put under there, remember, we cannot give what we do not have. Now, there's a giving, like a monetary, sometimes you give money and I don't necessarily have it, but if God tells me to do it, then I need to do it. So that's different than just spending everything and then being, okay, God, but that's why it's so important to walk with God, so that we know when he wants us to do things. Remember, God's got the ultimate plan. And if I gave Donna all my money and God didn't want that for me, and then I'm like, okay, well, pay my bills now. Well, he actually had provided a way for me to pay my bills, and I spent it. I spent it by giving it to Donna, and God hadn't told me to do that. That was just me wanting to help another Christian, and so I give her all my money. Well, now I have no way to pay my bills, and God didn't tell me to do that. Am I making myself clear here on what spending is? Spending of God's resources. So you have squandering, the person who's purposely living, and just, c'est la vie. That's, I think, what I was trying to say. What will be, will be. Yeah. Just coasting through life, just spending up what they have. The second one is the person who's actually spending their resources, their time, their health, everything for God, but not allowing God to replenish. Okay? Those are not where I want to be. Okay? The next bullet under the spending one is allowing the replenishment to take place means we have to hit a pause button. Okay? In order to get that replenishment, we have to hit a pause button, and this is what is a problem for a lot of people. And I feel bad. Like during the day, here's my example is, during the day, I feel really bad if I just sit and I'm not doing anything. If I just sit. because I always think I should be on the phones, I should be doing laundry, I should be, yeah. And our society, that's how we are. And I think we have to be careful that we don't think of that as being lazy. And that's a struggle in my mind, is I don't want to be lazy, so I better not just be sitting doing nothing. But we have to remember God's got it set up in cycles of rest and replenishment. In order to get the replenishment, we have to rest. Psalm 46:10, Jen.
Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth.
Be still and know that I am God. We have to hit pause and be still and turn our focus back to God and know that I am God. Turn our focus back to Him. That's part of rest and replenishment. And when we just spend and we're not ever still. So thinking back to my example of me just sometimes sitting, sometimes that's really, really healthy to do.
It is.
And just to sit, and it means me pushing away thoughts that somebody else or society or Satan has given me that, oh, you can't just sit here and do nothing. Well, no, but you can sit and rest and renew and focus on God. Okay? Now, if you're not focusing on God, that replenishment's not going to come. Okay? So that's key too, is we have to make sure, yes, we want to hit the pause button sometimes so we don't become that burnt out Christian. Brother Areza had preached a message about beating down the saints.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and this is part of that, is that we do become weary. God says, that He doesn't want us weary in well-doing. And so we have to follow His cycle of rest and renewal. So yes, hit that pause button sometimes, but make sure that we're allowing God to renew our resources. That is so important. And because all resources do come from God, it is God alone that has the power to replenish them. Despite the world's philosophy, we are not enough. You cannot get down into your innermost being and pull up that strong person is in there. And that is their philosophy. And we're not enough, but God is. And so the last group is the group that I want to be in. And this group, let me just do a time check here. We're doing good. This group is what we're striving for. This group of people that handle God's resources for them in stewarding. This is what the lessons are going to be about. I can't tell you how many lessons it's going to be. I'm just going to let God work and know that this is a starting point and that this is such a serious issue with so many Christians, is we need to understand what stewarding is and stewarding life. So stewarding, the group of people that stewards the resources that God has given them, this is when we recognize that life itself is a gift from God, and we purpose to use that life and the resources He's given us for His honor and His glory. Okay? It means understanding my life every day when I wake up is a gift. And you know what? This is purposeful. I use this phrase all the time, purposeful living, because the squandering ones, they have purposeless living. The stewarding Christians, we should have purposeful living. Ladies, I have to do things on purpose to make my life count for Christ. I have to do things on purpose, like bring myself back into focus with God, because I lose sight and I'm only human. Things have to be done on purpose, because if I don't, I'm just going to squander it. The day will go by and I'll be like, I've done nothing for God today. Yeah, because I didn't purposefully live. I didn't say, okay, God, help me to hand out that tract. It's so much of a mental battle too. This is a mental battle where so much of it is up here, coming from our heart and thinking, okay, I want to serve God. God, help me to remember to serve you today. I purposefully have to ask God to help me to remember it, because this flesh will cause me to be purposelessly living. if I don't watch it. Oh, 2022 went by. What did I do for God? This is what I'm talking about. Is that we, in order not to get to the end of 2022, the last day of 2022, and say, I didn't do anything for God. No, because you squandered it, or I squandered it, but with purposeless living. We have got to set out to be purposeful in our living and understand life is a gift from God. Everything He gives me, I'm going to use it for Him, and I'm going to use it so that it brings honor and glory to God. I want to steward my life in that way. Under the bullet under stewarding is that God has attached to each of our lives a purpose that only we can live out. Anyone have Jeremiah 29:11, Jen?
For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end.
That expected end. God has a plan for us, for each one. You know, God's plan for Donna isn't the one for Carol. God's plan for Jen isn't the one for me. He's attached to each of our lives a purpose that only we can carry out. But it's going to take purposeful living to be able to carry out that plan. And then the second bullet, when we talked about this, it's not about finding our inner anything to accomplish something. It's about God and His plan and using His resources that He gives me to carry out these plans. Psalm 138:8. Who has, Donna, you have that?
Yeah. The Lord will perfect that which concerneth me. Thy mercy, O Lord, endureth forever. Forsake not the works of thine own hand.
That really spoke to me when I saw that verse, is the Lord will perfect that which concerneth me. It's His plan. And if He has a plan for each of us, then He's giving us the resources and tools to do that. And He'll perfect that which concerneth me. But again, I have to be stewarding my life, and I have to be purposefully living and not squandering it or even spending it. You know, squandering's like that. No, I don't want to squander my life. Spending it has the facade of, oh, that looks good. That person's really spending themselves for Jesus, but then they're using themselves up. Whereas stewarding is understanding life's a gift, and God has given us resources, and He set up a system of rest and renewal to replenish those resources, because God is all-powerful, and He has a way of doing things, and He has a plan for me, and it's me submitting to that plan and not having my own plan.
And I think prayer. If we can get our mindset on prayer, that gets us focused back on God and His plan for us.
That is so
not just
true.
our plan.
Yep. And that close walk with Him in prayer is crucial to the Christian walk. The last bullet under that one says, a steward, and I thought this was really interesting. A steward spends by investment. This means purposeful living and putting in the time and work to fulfill God's purpose and goals for us. We're not going to read that, but that is the story about the servants with the talents, okay? And one just didn't want to put in the work. So he just went and put it in the dirt, you know? And he buried it. And so what came of it? Nothing. And that's how it is with stewarding the resources that God has given us. It's going to take work for us to steward, okay? It doesn't take work to squander, okay? But the results are really bad. It does take work to spend, but then you come to a point where you're all spent out and God, you didn't allow God to replenish. So both of those aren't good. We want to be where we're stewarding, where we spend by investment. We're investing in the things of God. We are purposefully living. We're putting in the time and the work to fulfill God's purpose and goals for us. We're putting in the time in our Bible and reading. We're putting in the time in prayer. Those two things right there, how will we fulfill God's plan for us if we're not reading our Bible and we're not praying on a regular, intimate basis with God? So it does. It's going to take time, and it's going to take work. But it's going to be so worth it if we learn to steward our life and our resources for Christ. All right, so I really do. Go ahead, Donna.
I find I've been studying the Kings. I've been using 1st, 2nd Kings and Chronicles, and I've found digging in it. I just love it. I just seeing the differences and applying God's care and His thoughts of each king and what He did to help them, or if they didn't seem to care, He just said, okay, it's all yours. You can handle it then.
Yeah.
You don't need me. So He just took His hands off of them. And sometimes, if they got really bad, He would call in different countries to come in and discipline them.
Yep.
And that study has made me, it's not only just the Bible, it's in the way I think toward life now, or look at people now, or look at my actions now. It all just kind of, it just incorporates in everything
Yep.
that I live, studying the Bible. It really does.
Studying
It's
our,
amazing.
yeah, it really is, and it's amazing what God will show us. And so I hope that this has been a helpful launching pad for our stewarding life. I believe the next lesson is about stewarding time, okay, which is huge. And we're going to talk about that. And nobody can go through these lessons and say, well, it doesn't apply to me. Yes, it does. It all applies to us. We don't ever have anything completely under control here because we're human. And so I hope that you do take the time and go over the back of the page next week, the origin of life, the sanctity of life, the sovereignty of life, and the promise of eternal life. That is good stuff on the back of there. And I will thank our online friends for joining us.